The graveyard shift, or the night shift, is a common practice in American business in which workers will stay up late for their shifts. This is especially common in the fast food industry. Normally, these shifts will start at sundown and will end once the sun comes back up. This comes from cemetery workers who would stay up at all hours of the night to make sure that everybody was, still dead. The reason for this was because during the plague pandemic in medieval Europe, it was common for people to be buried alive. So because of this, they would put bells inside their coffins to make sure, they were dead. Of course, someone needed to hear these bells, so that was the purpose of graveyard shift workers. Now, what does this have to do with SpongeBob? Well, the graveyard shift is also the name of a SpongeBob episode, more specifically, Season 2, Episode 16. And that's the episode that we're going to be reviewing for today. Why this one? Well, it's one of the most memorable and iconic episodes, but it's also one of the less reviewed episodes. And besides, it is October after all. And this is a pretty spooky episode. Well, this isn't actually a Halloween episode, but I think a YouTuber named Quentin Reviews sums it up pretty well. In a video of his, he explains that there are two types of SpongeBob holiday episodes. Ones that are focused around the holiday, and ones that just fit the general idea. So, for example, an episode like The Legend of Bikini Bottom is a Halloween episode. This one isn't, but like I said, it's still pretty spooky, and to be honest, I'd rather talk about this one than any of the other actual Halloween episodes. But whatever, let's just dive into it. The episode begins with Squidward and SpongeBob planning on closing the Krusty Krab. However, an obnoxious customer decides to walk on up and ask if they're open, despite what the sign says. Squidward says that they can't stay up that late, but of course Mr. Krabs intervenes. Mr. Krabs realizes that people are willing to pay that much money to eat Krabby Patties at all hours of the night. So he tells Squidward and SpongeBob that now they're going to be working the night shift. Normally fast food places will have two sets of staff, one for the day and one for the night. Normally they don't use the same people. But then again, there are only two Krusty Krab employees, and Mr. Krabs is way too cheap for that. Besides, he has a life. Who even eats Krusty Krabs at 3 a.m. in the morning? And, oh wait, Patrick does. You wouldn't want to deny Patrick customer service. He'd get pretty angry, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
I'll cut off your nutsack and nail it to my door! Like one of those lion door knockers rich folks got!
Now Squidward has to stay up late, working the cash register with SpongeBob. How could things get any worse? Well, SpongeBob has to take out the trash, except it seems that he's a bit afraid of the dark. Of course, Squidward takes advantage of this and decides to tell SpongeBob a ghost story. The story is about a former Krusty Krab fry cook who accidentally cut his hand off and replaced it with a spatula. Okay, first of all, you replaced it with a spatula? No medical attention, no prosthetics? That's kinda weird, but whatever. But either way, he got hit by a bus. And then, after his funeral, he was fired. Yes, in that particular order. I don't know why they decided to fire a dead person, but whatever. Now, every Tuesday, he comes to the Krusty Krab late at night, and he haunts anybody who's there. And wouldn't you know it, SpongeBob and Patrick are at the Krusty Krab at night on Tuesday. You can tell his spirit is there when the phone rings and no one picks it up, and when the lights begin to flicker, and when the bus that he got hit by arrives. What is this menace's name? His name is the hash-slinging slasher. Of course, this is a bunch of malarkey, but SpongeBob believes it, and he's very scared. So he screams, and screams, and screams, and screams. Squidward tells SpongeBob that it was just a prank, and then SpongeBob laughs. And laughs, and laughs, and laughs. The rest of the night goes on as normal, until the lights start to flicker, just like in the story. At first, Squidward thinks that it's just SpongeBob trying to play a prank, but no one was touching the light switch. So they just chalk it up to the electricity. But then they get a phone call. Side note, I love the way Squidward answers the phone.
What? Hello? Hello?
But nobody answers, just like in the story. SpongeBob thinks that Squidward is just trying to prank him, but he can't be on both lines of the phone at once. Squidward realizes that the events of the story are happening in real life. First there was the flickering lights, then there was the phone, and after that the walls ooze with green slime. But that happens all the time. You know, Mr. Krabs should probably get that fixed, but once again, probably too cheap for that. After that, a bus comes by and drops off a mysterious figure wielding a spatula. Squidward is terrified at the sight of this, but SpongeBob still thinks that he's trying to prank him, which makes him delighted that Squidward would go that far to entertain him. But he realizes that Squidward can't be in two places at once. SpongeBob realizes that that wasn't Squidward and ends up cowering in fear, accepting the fate. But the slasher walks out of the shadows and reveals that he's just a normal guy.
Can I have a job
who's trying to
application?
interview for a
I
job
brought my
there.
own spatula.
Who's actually
I
him
called
who
earlier, but I hung up
Not the
because I
slasher.
was nervous.
And
Do
of
you
course,
have
SpongeBob
references?
wants to interview
Wait,
him, but
that
Squidward
was you
notices
on the
something.
phone, and you...
It was the person flickering the lights. But, of course, it was just Nosferatu. So that explains it. Okay, let me explain this. You see, Nosferatu is a silent German film that came out in 1922. The movie is a retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The main vampire of the movie is not named Nosferatu, but Count Orlok, which is just a legally safe version of Count Dracula. The vampire was played by Max Schreck. No, not that Shrek. Although Max Schreck is also the name of the villain from Batman Returns. Interesting. Nosferatu is also considered one of the oldest horror films ever made. In fact, for a long time, the movie was actually considered lost media. I'm not sure why a show from the early 2000s that's intended for kids decided to reference a horror movie from almost 100 years ago. But that's SpongeBob for you. You should check it out. It's actually a pretty good movie, and you can find the full thing on YouTube. But anyways, with that, the episode ends. So, why do I think this episode is an instant classic? Well, I think what really makes this episode great is the visuals. The uses of black, green, and orange really give it a Halloween and horror vibe to it. It looks really cool because we've never seen Bikini Bottom look like this, you know, with all the green fog and stuff. I especially love the open forever sign. It really gives it a nice touch. Aside from that, I really love the dynamic of SpongeBob and Squidward staying late at the Krusty Krab. Of course, Squidward just wants to be home, and of course SpongeBob loves being overworked. I also like how rushed and confusing Squidward's story is. Like, you can really tell that he just made it up on the spot. I also like how when the story starts to come true, they both start switching between believing it or not. SpongeBob thinks that he's being pranked by Squidward, and then Squidward thinks he's being pranked by SpongeBob. Another thing about the animation in this episode are the expressions. SpongeBob is one of those shows where you can always just pause at random moments and get a funny face. This episode is no exception. Just look at some of these faces and tell me that they're not hilarious. The music for this episode is also pretty good. It kind of reminds me of one of the classic Universal Monster scores, like the creature from the Black Lagoon and the Mummy. All in all, this episode is silly, spooky, and fun for the whole family. With that out of the way, I'll see you guys... Well, actually, I don't really know when. I'm not really sure when the next of these SpongeBob episodes is going to be uploaded. I'll probably do another one in November, and if that's the case, it'll just be a regular episode. Or I might do it in December, which in that case, it'd be a Christmas one. Whatever, just stay tuned for the next episode, and besides, this outro's been a little too long. Oh yeah, and I have social medias and stuff. Here.